My boyfriend and I have been studying together at university, and while he is studying part-time, working part-time and engaging heavily in his amateur acting career, while I am studying full-time and working part-time, we share one subject at uni together. On top of this, he is trying to pick up another hobby while looking after his grandfather who is in his final stages, in a nursing home. As you can imagine, for the past 6 months he has very little time to cut out of his week to spend with me. None, in fact. I have been fine with this for the most part. I have been driving 45 minutes 3+// times a week to get to his house so we can steal a few hours together, but he doesn't have time to spare. This is an inconvenience I can live with. However, he has been asking me to do a lot of other things too. He has frustrated me multiple times with demands that I visit his grandfather, who does not recognize me, for 2 hours, which turns into 4.5 hours, or help him with a family matter, which lasts 5 hours or so. Every time this happens, he promises he will drive me home. And every time he says he doesn't have time anymore and I need to catch the train home, 1 hour plus walking. I have spoken to him about how this is unfairly affecting me, and he seems to take it on board, but just forgets again the next time he needs something. After forcing me to spend $600 plus on his best friend's destination wedding, the weekend before we both had 2 major exams due, he demands that we switch our exam times because he didn't spend enough time studying and he needed the extra day. I concede and he squanders his spare day sleeping because he needed it. I take my classes very seriously and I feel very over by his demands. I understand that family matters / best friends are important things, but he has eaten into hours and hours of my study time, and my grades are dropping. Not only that, but it's affecting my emotional health also. I have expressed to him that it is affecting me badly, but he tells me I'm being very unsympathetic and selfish. What's more is that I have about $10,000 in savings. He recently became aware of this and has demanded that I help him pay his bills because we're a team, he is broke. I helped him with a few, but drew the line after $500 because he is very irresponsible with money and there's only so much I can pour out before it seriously affects me. He is also demanding that I give him access to my bank account because we are in this together. And he wants to marry me one day, so we should start sharing now. I don't really know what to do. I want to be a good girlfriend and do what he needs me to do right now, but it's beginning to affect my health. I am a 28 years old female was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with "I'm my name, but you can call me nickname." None of my co-workers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, the niece of Jeff, one of the 2 owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way. Even when I knew she really needed help with something, she would call my desk phone and say, "Hey, Bessie," I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description, and threatened to stop helping them unless they used my preferred nickname. Friday she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-song voiceover and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other co-workers got annoyed, most telling her to stop and one Lisa telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder, until Dave barged in. He'd been on a conference call with an important client and could hear her yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me an for getting her in trouble and called me Bessie again for good measure just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the for never helping Megan, and that, if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago, but because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. About 5 years ago, my now estranged daughter, Edie, cheated on her boyfriend, Brad, and got together with a guy, Ken. He quickly started isolating her from family and my husband and I from her kids. Brad had moved back to his home state devastated after the breakup. I discussed red flags her. I let her know we are here for her and concerned. Her and Ken suddenly took off and moved to another state. For 5 months, my husband and I worried about her and the kids as we had n//c at all with them. One day CPS showed up at our door with the oldest child. He was obviously injured from abuse that was reported by the school. We had no idea they had moved back to the area. We agreed to take them in. The next 20 months were traumatic, complicated, emotional, and difficult for everyone. Through it we re-established a relationship with the older child's dad, Dan. Daughter failed to comply with her plan and remained with Ken. Dan worked hard to get custody of his child and he gave Edie scheduled weekly phone calls. She called oldest child 2x nothing since. We agreed to permanent custody of youngest. In the process, I put aside the hurt Edie caused and agreed to scheduled weekly phone calls and supervised visits in person when schedules allowed. Legally, any or no contact is at my sole discretion. Ken was not allowed to interfere //attend. Edie quit calling //scheduling visits after 3 months. I reset the call schedule to 1 month. No calls. 6 months later she calls and wanted me to drop everything for a visit the following day. I couldn't because I had to go back to work. Calls stopped again. She left Ken, has a new BF. I know nothing else about her life / whereabouts. She started calling again about a year ago and I let her know that if she was consistent with her monthly scheduled calls, we would move towards weekly calls again. She called 2 months in a row, skipped a couple months, then called 2 more months in a row. Last one happened to be night before child's birthday. She asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said a call from her. The next day, as he blew out candles, he said, "My mom is gonna call now." He had the biggest smile on his face. Call never came. He refused my offer to call her. We survived an emotional meltdown. Next month, no call, just a text after with a lame timing excuse as to why and sorry about the birthday call, she didn't feel well. Following month, I get a text that Edie feels ill again, won't be calling. I am beyond frustrated at this point. I have looked past her refusal to rebuild a relationship with us, but when it comes to the kids my heart aches for them. Hey race where I might be the I responded, "Parents do not get sick time. We all had COVID recently, including me, and I still took care of the children. If you do not have any time for him once a month, I don't want my time wasted with your excuses." Of course, calls stopped again. My partner has been through a lot. We had been dating for 2 years and planning a life together when she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time she was in school for a dual graduate degree program and managed to finish it. Treatment was rough on her and she struggled a lot through it, and hasn't done well mentally dealing with the unfairness of it all. How different her body is after surgeries, and the fear of it coming back. All perfectly understandable, and I've been as supportive as I can throughout it all. Now all that said, she went into the graduate programs after we started dating, and one of the degrees was at a very expensive school for something that was only related and not required for the work she planned on doing, which would never pay very well. I questioned her about it gently at the time, but she was adamant about getting the expensive degree. It was her life. And we agreed it would be fine, because we could utilize public service loan forgiveness to pay off her debt that would total $100K. This was before cancer. I earn a considerable amount more than her. When we started dating I made 4x, and even with her degrees I make 3x what she does. I've always been happy to spend money on her. And after having moved in together over a year ago and proposing shortly after I really went into the mindset of it being our money, when we moved in she was finishing her degrees and I covered 100% of our bills, including some tuition costs for an extra semester since she was slightly delayed by her treatment. This was totally fine because school was her job and she'd be able to contribute when she graduated, and even though I make much more, if we are both working full-time jobs it felt fair. Now that she has graduated and started working, she is miserable at her job mostly because she is incredibly anxious that she isn't doing it well, and doesn't feel like her school prepared her. She was already prone towards anxiety and depression, she takes medicine for it. But mentally she is in a very bad spot because of all this. On top of that she feels like she doesn't doing enough for her health, mostly exercise, to keep her healthy to reduce the cancer from coming back, but she says she is too tired after work to do much else than occasionally go on a walk. Recently she got the idea in her head to start working half weeks to give her more time to exercise and stress her out about work less. She says not knowing for sure how long she'll live has changed her priorities about working. Before all this she was a pretty driven type of personality working multiple jobs. But working part-time doesn't meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness. We've talked about it extensively and she feels it is important for her to work part-time. But I am not very comfortable with the idea for many reasons. I get where she is coming from in her needs, but feel like she is looking for a quick fix to her problems. That puts us in a pretty big hole financially because she is so miserable instead of fully dealing with her problems. I'd be more okay with it if it was short term while she sorted through some things, but she says she just wants more time to exercise and be stress-free, so she doesn't know when that would end. I just feel like she is taking our relationship, which is already unbalanced, and asking to make it a lot more so, and solely because she is in a position to do so because of my job. We can financially afford it, but I haven't been able to come to terms about the disproportionality it would create in our relationship. P.S. My longtime partner wants to start working half-time to relieve her work stress and give her more time to take care of her health, but it makes me uncomfortable because she has $100,000 of debt and it would make our relationship very unbalanced.